Okay.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I don't do as much of this stuff anymore as I used to. So,
Well, I
you
have
it's like
started
I used to. I had a radio show in the '90s. And,
Oh, so you just old hats for you.
And then they.
I didn't know about the radio show.
Oh yeah, the station in Jackson that is not Super Talk was a twinkle in Steve Davenport's eye in the '90s. I mean, they were there.
Well, he's
but
done
they
well
weren't.
with it.
But they weren't. You mean they weren't Super Talk?
No.
Right. And so WJNT, Jackson News Talk,
that's
who
the deal?
had the Rush Limbaugh show.
Really?
So I had the morning show, and it was great. And we talked, politics. And every time I strayed off of politics, I'd get this guy Mac Gordon, who used to write for the Clarion Ledger.
I remember that name.
You remember that name?
Yeah.
Mac was running the communications office at the House of Representatives, and I walked into the Capitol. I was working for Fordice. I walked into the Capitol one morning after a show. They Fordice let me have the show, and Mac looked at me and goes, "Would you please stop talking about football, because you know nothing about football.
Stick with politics.
Like nothing. Just talk about politics. You know about politics, but you don't know anything about football.
By the
so
way,
quit talking about it."
This is my guest today, Hayes Dent. He is very well known in the state of Mississippi. And you've already kind of jumped into the background. You're from Yazoo City all your life, right?
All my life.
But there were some interesting asides in there, right?
Oh, yeah,
Did you
sure.
work in Washington as a young man?
D.C. and spent a year in Iraq, and just I've had a great
Desert Storm,
first Desert Storm, Desert Shield. I was living in Washington. I was working for H.W. Bush 41.
Yeah.
And they
91.
I was at Department of Agriculture working with the old ASC back when FSA was.
I still call it ASC.
I know.
Office,
I know. I was working for a guy named Keith Bierke. He was a grain sorghum farmer from North Dakota, and we were handling the 1990 Farm Bill. It was a great experience for me, and. I growing up in Yazoo City, it's Haley Barbour.
Yeah.
Right. Touchstone, Ground Zero, whatever you want to call it. And so he had us, just because we both small First Presbyterian Church in Yazoo City. It's like, I need you to help me put signs up, or I need you to make phone calls. Back then you made phone calls.
Well, and back in those days, he was running campaigns, not running for office.
That's right. And so we started doing it as like kids. I mean, like literally, and I remember. I tell people I was the first race. I think I really truly remember. I was 9. It was the 1971 state races, because we have odd year elections, in Mississippi. And then my first paycheck, I got a paycheck in 1978. I was 16, so that was the first time I got paid to work on a campaign. And so,
whose campaign was that?
Well, interestingly, it was Maurice Danton, who was a lawyer from Columbia, who was running against a guy named Thad Cochran. And so I was 16. There were these men in Yazoo City who had gone to college with Maurice at Ole Miss back in the 50s. And so I went and I was just, man, let me go put some signs up. Let me go make some phone calls. Let me, or whatever. So I wasn't quite ideologically blocked at 16 yet. And so, but interestingly, and we laughed about it his whole life after he found out, was I became a Republican. People, you hear people say all the time, I found the Lord on May the 3rd, 1964. Yeah. And that's true. I'm not knocking it. It happens, and it didn't happen for me.
I was born into it, like you were.
But I was born into it, and I guess probably at some summer camp I had to go to, or whatever. Yeah. But anyway, I remember 1978, and I was going, and it wasn't like Maurice Danton was some raging Chuck Schumer liberal or something. I mean, nobody was back then. I mean, they were filling Eastland's role, right? And
which was a totally different kind of Democrat.
Which was a totally different kind of Democrat. Yeah. And Maurice Danton was more like that than he was modern day Democrat. So. But there was something about Cochran and what he said and how he said it, and just hook, line, and sinker. And for me, that was it. And then, of course, Reagan came along in '80, and the rest is history, as they say.
Well, you were talking about calling my first campaign in 2006. We literally
I knew you were a judge.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I knew your name before you were an influencer and a positivity coach or whatever. And we met in Indianola. But I remember that. I remember you being a judge.
And I ran the campaign old school. There was no social media. In '06, there wasn't even an iPhone.
Right.
People forget. Not that 20 years ago, there wasn't an iPhone.
Right.
And so I had a group of women, older ladies, that had the phone book. And they would literally go through the phone book the night before and call everybody. And we had them highlighted who we wanted them to call. And everybody had a section of the phone book. And we had compared that against voter rolls. And now there's not even a phone book.
True story. True story. I know the last time I did that, okay? Thad Cochran, his last campaign, 2014, running against a very, very charismatic, influential sort of really good on his feet. Chris McDaniel was on it, good on it. I mean, it really was. Still is, for that matter. And I talked to Senator Cochran in October. He called me in October 13, and he said, look, man, next year's campaign, and he had already started slipping a little, and I really wanted him to come home. I really wanted him. I knew that he was going to move to Oxford and live out his days there, but he didn't ask me. I said, Senator Cochran, he said, I need your support if I run, and I said, well, if you run. You mean, of course, and he knew from going back to '78. And so I wasn't involved in the campaign, and it was a horribly run campaign. And it was just, there was an assumption that he would win. It was an assumption he'd beat this guy, and he almost did not. I mean, there was a runoff.
It was very close.
And so some of us...
What year was that?
2014.
14, yeah.
Some of us old hands got involved in the runoff, and I will never forget. It was the last time I got a phone book out. But Clark Reed in Greenville called me and said, "Look, I got 30 people. We got to turn this vote out." And what had happened really in that first run, the primary, was people just thought Thad would win, and they didn't vote. It wasn't any. Everybody's there's some people who would like to tell you in the runoff they got this group to do this and that group to do all this subterfuge. That really didn't happen. We went into Greenville, and I sat down with about 30 people, and we literally tore pages out of a phone book. And I said, y'all, we just got to turn people out. We didn't turn people out. And that's how we won. The Delta literally won it for Clark, for Thad in the runoff.
That's the same way we ran. Like, I understood what votes I was most likely to get. Yeah. Just instinctively. We didn't have data because it's so small. Right. But I was like, I got to make sure those people show up. And so we were just so organized on that side of things that I knew I would win. Right. Everybody thought I was going to lose that first place because I had a great opponent. And everybody thought I was going to lose to him. And I was like, no, and in fact, I ran against two people. I said, I'll beat them without a runoff. And I beat him without a runoff. And did you? Yeah. You probably worked really hard. I worked really hard. Yeah. So the guy that I was running against actually is a good friend of mine now. And he told me kind of the same situation. He thought that I would rest on my laurels and not work that hard. He said, I never went anywhere where I didn't see you there already. And we're friends now. That's what it's all about. Yeah. Politics is still about that. Now, it's done differently. I mean, in the campaigns we've looked at and been involved in the last 6 or 8 years, it's social media now it just touches everybody. It's sort of the public square. And so you can't run a successful campaign anymore without being in that thing. I remember in 2011 I was running Lynn Fitch's campaign for state treasurer, and one of the candidates would post on Facebook. I wasn't going to all these meet and greets and all these little functions all over the state, and one of our opponents would go, "Man, great crowd tonight in Mendenhall." And said they're really receptive to my message, and and this sort of thing. That stuff gets traction. And I was going, "Oh my
gosh, and we gotta get out there and whatever. Well, it turned out I ended up I said I've got to go see what's going on, And this guy, a little bit of an introvert, and wasn't doing anything.
Kind of like the pretty girls on Instagram. They're not that pretty in real life.
And I would watch, and then I'd see the post, and it'd be completely opposite. But the post was getting all this traction.
Yep.
So, and it's a great guy, the person that and very young but did really well, but it was what people know. I mean, I've noticed this with my own kids and kids in their 20s and even in their 30s. They know that digitally that's kind of where it's at now. I was talking to my daughter the other day about she was looking at renting a place in Jackson. Well, I went to Zillow, and I'm like, don't go to Zillow for Jackson, Mississippi, or Madison or something, I said, we know people over there. Yeah. We can get you set up. We get your, and I'm like, that's not how you do that. And so anyway.
Well, my last election is funny because 2006, which was a special election, because my dad passed away. My 2006, all old school. We did TV, radio, newspaper, all traditional media, and then the phone calls and all that.
Yeah.
2015, I did none of that. We did do the phone call still, but the list was different because we didn't have an accurate phone book anymore. So I just said, call the people and get you know.
Did you run for judge because your dad? I mean, was the reason that you stepped up?
Yes.
Was because of your father?
Yes. So right up in the front of this restaurant, Barry Brown. I've told this story a lot. Barry probably gets tired of me telling it. But it's Barry. Like my dad dies on a Friday. We bury him on a Tuesday. On Wednesday or Thursday, Barry's in the restaurant saying, "Hey, we got to appoint somebody." And I was like, I don't think that I want to do this. Really.
Yeah.
Wasn't something that was on my mind.
Sure.
And maybe fleetingly I had wonder who they'd get to be judge, never thinking they were going to ask me to do it. Because I was pretty young, man. I was 32 and looked 24.
Yeah, you look 32 now.
I'm 52. And fixing to be 53. And so he said, well, look, you ain't got to run for it. We're just going to appoint you. There'll be a special election in November, and you can be done with it. And actually, they asked me not to run for it. They said, we don't generally appoint people that want to run for it. I said, well, I said, all right, that's fine. So they have their meeting the next Monday because they have to appoint somebody within so many days or whatever.
Right, yeah.
And had the meeting the next Monday, and he says, we'll put it in the minutes that you're not planning on running for it. And I said, I'm not even going. Because there's a whole nother deal. I was in the field, we were planting beans and all that. And I was just a formality, I'm going to be there till November. And he calls me, he said, we didn't put it in the minutes that you wouldn't run. We actually think you'd be a pretty good judge. And I went, So
but they appointed you.
They appointed me. So I ran as the sitting judge, which was very helpful.
Yeah, I bet.
To walk door to door and introduce myself as Judge Sheridan.
Sure.
So
and it looks good on a poster.
Vote to keep. I couldn't say re-elect.
Right.
Vote to keep on the poster.
Right. Well, look, there's this gal down in Jackson who runs all the time. And you got candidates that run all the time.
Yeah.
It's like they just figure it out.
What was the guy in the Green Party that ran in every state seat or whatever?
And one of this girl used to put up, finally, I noticed this about 10 years ago, her signs said, reselect. Which she was asking the people that had voted for her to reselect her, and so, but when you look at the sign, it was, you couldn't really pick that S up.
No.
It was just, you just sort of said, she's running for, wait.
Did it ever work?
Yeah. No.
So there's a lesson there too.
No, it didn't work. It did not work.
So in the 80s, am I crazy, or did you work with Reagan some in '80s, like maybe in college or something like that?
Yeah. Worked for Reagan in the 1984 campaign and Bush in the '88
you in
campaign.
College then, in
I was.
84?
Yep. I spent, when I ran against Benny in '93 and ran for Congress in the Delta, there was much to be made, particularly by the Clarion Ledger and my opponents, about my 10 years at Ole Miss. And of course,
because it was so long, or what were they trying to say?
Well, just he took 10 years to graduate from college, or whatever.
So I remember that campaign. I don't remember that discussion. That part of it.
And so I was. Let's just say that my field of wild oats was larger than most people's fields of wild oats, and so I mean, I owned it.
Yeah.
I just figured it was the only way to do
So
it.
did George Bush.
Now, the truth is that I, in 1982, stayed out of school and worked for Haley Barbour when he ran for the Senate. 84, I worked for Reagan Bush. 86, I worked for a guy that was running for Congress in North Carolina. 88, I worked in the Bush campaign. 87, I worked for Jim Herring, who was running for Attorney General. So my semester enrollment at Ole Miss is no different than anybody else's. It just took place over a 10-year period.
Because you were in and out.
Because I was in and out, I'd take a semester off and go work on a political campaign. And today, I don't regret any of that because for me,
that was education.
For me, it was building my network and doing what I love doing and all that sort of stuff. I always knew I'd finish school, but I just didn't, and then I literally was having to take a correspondence class. One like the last 3 hours or something was the easiest way to get that done. And I got mobilized for Desert Storm in late 90. So I had to call my teacher. Fortunately, he was very patriotic.
Yeah.
I was about 80% through the class. And he goes, God bless you. So, thank you for serving. And that was it. And when I came home, I was a graduate,
a correspondence back in those days is a whole lot different than today.
Oh, yeah.
Any online class.
No, we were talking by telephone, and I was calling on the landline, as they say. But yeah, I worked all of those campaigns, and then was able to, in the 90s, start running campaigns, and I knew when Haley, I wanted to work in government. That's what I thought I was going to. I never thought I was going to do anything else, but I've taken time off and done other things, and so, but it's always been pretty close to government and politics. It's always sort of had one foot in. Even today, when I do something, the work that I do in the development business is mostly centered around the tax credits, historic tax credits, new markets tax credits, low income housing
like
tax
our friends,
credits,
the
or whatever. Any of that sort of thing, I know because I understand government. I've been helping a nonprofit for the last 2 or 3 months on what's called Mississippi Charitable Credits Act, and Department of Revenue's involved. It's a great way for nonprofits to generate income, and I just love it. I'd rather do that than quote unquote be a lobbyist, and at the Capitol sort of thing. And so it's always kind of had one foot in though. It's what I know.
What was it like working for Fordice? He was an interesting character. He was a genuine guy. I mean, the one thing that I was talking to a real estate broker from Ohio on the way up here this morning, and we were laughing about how he was asking me about Venezuela and all this kind of stuff, and we were just kind of the conversation before we got to business. We were talking about sort of his approach to politics, and that sort of thing. And I'm like, the biggest thing people don't understand is that, and I think you probably do because you've sort of lived that, on a local level, but still you've lived it nonetheless. I tell people all the time, if you want to see your politician, stand at the doorway at Walmart, because we truly live in a representative democracy. We vote for people. We don't vote for, it's not always, okay? Everything's like perfect or whatever. But in a representative democracy, the people vote generally for someone they think is like them, Fordice was a fascinating guy. First of all, he was super smart. Doesn't mean, the other thing, these guys don't mean they don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that they are occasionally make a mistake on family issues or personal issues or whatever. It's not. But we all do. We're all sinners, right? And so
But Fordice, the thing that I liked about him and that he changed me in one huge regard, which was there was no forked tongue. There's no, and it served me well for the last 30 years. And it's just, you just say to people what you're supposed to say to people, particularly in a closed door meeting when there was nothing to a fault. Yeah. I mean, yeah. we walked out. He was mad one day. We were at the Capitol in the governor's office. There's this tiny elevator nobody knows about, and the governor can ride it. And so he and I, you can barely fit three people. That's crowded. I mean, it's crazy little elevator. But we were speaking to a group on the first floor of the Capitol, and man, he was mad about something. And I mean, when he got mad, it was just hell to pay. We go down the elevator, and he we come out. We're walking down the hall to this thing, and I noticed this couple with a kid, kind of a grown kid, 20 years old maybe, in a wheelchair. They were kind of standing there, and they focused on him coming down the hall. You could just see it. I was watching because I kind of was visually looking around what was going on, and they eyes kind of lit up, and he just didn't. I mean, he didn't see any of that.
He was zeroed in on
he was dialed in on whatever he was mad at, and what he was fixing to do, And so he walked by, and the husband kind of grabbed me and said, "You think there's any way the governor could speak to Johnny here, or whatever?" And I'm like, "Well, he's running here to make a talk real quick. Let's, whatever." And sure enough, he got something. He would do this too. He would get angrier during a speech. Like it'd be almost like in the back of his mind, he was going, "I can't believe I'm doing this while I'm over here focused on this other thing, whatever." And it just get jacked up a little bit more. And and so we walked. I kind of knew, and I looked, and I said they were still there. This couple with this young child. And I'm like going, "Hey, look, could you talk to this kid? They really want to meet you, or whatever." And he turned and looked at me, and I knew by the look on his face that wasn't going to happen. And it just, and he just kept going. And I just remember I was, 30 years old or something. And I just kind of looked at him. I was like, "I'm sorry, he's got to get on the phone, or something." I tried to come up with something, but he was an intense guy.
Yeah.
But he was one of the smartest guys I've ever been around. A lot of people don't, look, he was an engineer, graduated from Purdue with a graduate degree as well, with an MBA. And he was smart, just common sense, walking around kind of smart. But he knew history as good as anybody I've ever been around, ever.
Yeah.
And was a big time reader, and he just really understood it. And I think for him, the thing he did not understand, none of us did, because he was the first Republican governor. We didn't really, none of us understood that the governor it's a big deal. There's no question, okay? You live in a really cool house on Capitol Street, and you get highway patrolmen that hang out with you and make sure nobody messes with you, and just all these kinds of really neat things. But you don't run state government. You don't have
a lot of power.
You don't tell the secretary. All these guys are independently elected. So you don't even tell the attorney. It's like you think. I had a super big business guy in Jackson late in his term come to me one time and said, "We got to talk to Fordice about some stuff going on the Gulf Coast. Secretary of State's just running crazy down there." And I'm like, "Look, all I know about you is good by reputation." I said, "But you need to understand something. Secretary of State not only doesn't work for the governor, they don't even like each other. And he don't report to him. He's independently elected. The attorney general's that way. Certainly the lieutenant governor. They had problems with Eddie Briggs in the first term of Fordice's term as governor. Eddie was a new Republican. Fordice had been, when we were meeting in the phone booth in the 60s and 70s, he was a Republican then. And so beat Pete Johnson that year in a primary, and Pete had just converted to being a Republican. And so But he was an interesting guy, and I think he kicked things off well. And then, of course, it's been pretty much the whole time, other than 4 years of Ronnie Musgrove.
Yeah.
You know.
It's interesting what you say. I don't think people know that there's only certain things you think they're administrative, but they only have control over certain things. Just like our mayors. Everybody will say, we don't like the police chief, fire the police chief. Well, the mayor can't fire anybody. The board has to take action.
Exactly.
And then they can do something with that action. But I don't think people really understand how state government and local government works.
Well, you know,
Do
we
you
don't.
get that feeling?
We don't. Yeah, well, we don't. I don't know that we teach civics as well as we should in
think we do.
schools anymore, and so people need to understand. I've, you know, my kids have been around it their whole life, and so they, you know, we've talked about it. But this thing, I kind of harp on representative democracy. We are, our leaders are a reflect. If you want to see what kind of country you're living in, you can kind of look to the president. You can kind of look to the governor. You can kind of look to these people. Local politics has always really fascinated me. I don't do it as much, but it fascinates me because, you know, people always, particularly in the Delta, we hear people talk about, you know, well, I'm getting white and black vote, you know, and I've done really, really well.
Which is a funny conversation to have anywhere else.
It is, of course it is, and it can even be touchy if you just sort of, but for me, it's sort of clinical, or, you know, it's just like, hey, this is what it is, right? And so
statistics are statistics.
That's right. And so if you look at the local level, and it's usually because people know you better than they know Tate Reeves, or than they know Joe Biden or Donald Trump.
It's the same reason I went to every door.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And they vote for sort of a brand, but on the local level, they know, in a lot of cases, know your family history.
Yeah.
You know, and they know, and so I've got one of my best friends is mayor of Natchez, Mississippi, and he's not a native. He lived down there. He moved 6 or 8 years before he got elected mayor, but it's turned into the greatest kind of renewal of a city that had lost its way of anything I've ever seen in my whole, like, since the 1980s.
Well, you and I talked a little about that. Let's expand on it since you know that. Maybe he needs to come be on the show.
He would love to. He'd do a great job. You know, what a local official is supposed to do, and I mean, the president ought to do this too, okay? But what a local official's got to do, and Dan and I talked about this prior to him being elected. I talked to Antar Lumumba when he came to try and get me to contribute to his campaign when he was running for mayor of Jackson. I said, look, this is what needs to happen. You need to make sure the streets are paved, that the infrastructure works, meaning when people take baths and use the bathroom and clean their house or whatever, that's not a problem. Firemen need to know if there's a fire that's taken care of. There needs to be. And then, if you have enough time after that, then you go to sit down with the business community and say, what can I do to help you hire one more person this year? What can we do to do this or whatever? Natchez, I mean, that's exactly what Dan has done. Now, he's a capable guy, so he does other things than what I just mentioned, but he makes sure that those basics are taken care of. And in a city, Natchez is a town demographically very much like the Delta, and so you've got to sit down and say, this is how I feel about race relations. This is how I feel about opportunity, and people either buy into that or not. If they don't know somebody, they don't really buy into. It's like on a congressional level, even a state legislative level, where you've got multiple counties involved, where you just don't really know somebody the way you do on a local level. And,
the way you do a mayor.
The way you do a mayor. And I mean, Dan, he ran again for re-election in 24, and he did not have an opponent. And so when you look at, I mean, we've had in towns that are majority African American, Greenwood, Mississippi. Yeah. Carolyn McAdams was mayor forever. Okay, she always had an opponent. Sometimes it was a good, credible opponent, and then sometimes it was an opponent who the good, credible guy didn't step forward or lady step forward and it just said, well, I'm black, vote for me. And whites do that too. That's not a black. Yeah. So you can, you know, and so things like that can finally catch up with you. Demographics and math math wins every time. I tell people this all the time, but math wins every single time. And so if you don't know somebody, then you default to what you think you know. And so that's a big piece of why we see, to me at least, politics the way it is today.
Charlie Cap told me something one time. He said, there's only two ways to run a campaign, and that's unopposed or scared.
That's right.
And so my first opponent was a very good opponent. And then I did have, the second time I was unopposed. But the special election, 3 months later we were signing up for regular. I think I snuck by. People didn't realize I was up for election again. But yeah, the next two opponents I had were not that great. I got 85% of the vote my last time against an actual opponent. You know what I mean? That's pretty strong. Yeah. I got 90-something% here in Drake.
I got to tell you, the best piece of advice I ever got from Charlie Capps was I'm great friends with his son, and I'm also got to be good. I got to be drink? Water, please. Yeah.
I've got something back here.
You need some ketchup.
No, but some mustard and salt would be awesome.
Okay.
Charlie Capps was the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. House Appropriations Committee when Fordice was elected governor, and so Chip Morgan with the Delta Council was very close to Capps, as you can imagine. And, and he and I are very close friends. And he said, Mr. Capps wants to go to lunch with you. And I just started with Kirk Fordice. And I was 29, and I was a respectful guy. I wasn't, I was like, but I literally, my title for Fordice was executive advisor to the governor. Okay, now that's a
That's a pretty good title.
Look, when you see that on a business card, you're kind of like, look at me, man. Thank you. And so that was back when Dennery's was open, where everybody would go to Dennery's. That was right down the hill from the Capitol. And Charlie Capps and I went down to Dennery's, and we're sitting there eating lunch. And Capps goes, look, Chip speaks very highly of you, and that means a lot in my book. And I know that you run around with my son, and I love my son, of course. And he said, so I want to tell you something and just talk to you and help you. I want you to be successful, And one of the things he said over that lunch was, he said, let me tell you this, buddy. He said, I am sure they've given you some big ass title. So I'm thinking, I'm the executive advisor to the governor. He said, but whatever it is, whatever is on that business card you got, okay? He said, 6 months after you're gone from working for the governor, ain't nobody gonna remember it. They ain't gonna remember what your title was. All they're gonna remember is whether you were good to them or not. And he says that will mean all the difference in the world. And it has. It's just been just unbelievable. There's some of the best advice I ever got in my life. And it's helped me grow a very successful lobbying business, just literally because of that one lunch. Thanks to Charlie Capps.
Yeah, he had so many good lines. He told me one time that he was running against a guy, real young guy, and the guy said, we'll go door to door. And he said this guy had no real chance of beating me, but he would knock on doors.
True story.
And he said, Charlie Capps is a fine fellow, but if he doesn't come here and knock on your door and ask for your vote, I just want you to remember that I did. And he said, that got back to me, and he said, I went, dang, I'm going to have to go out there and knock on all these doors.
And that's why he retired. Because he said he did after one more time, but it's one of the big reasons he retired. And I said to Chris McDaniel in 2014, They came to me in February of 2014, him and his press guy, who I knew was a Yazoo County guy. And he said, look, man, you need to be for us. You're conservative. You need to be for Chris. And I just said, look, Chris, I think you've got great potential. I really do. I don't think you ought to go challenge a guy like Thad Cochran, but that's just my own advice. You take it or leave it.
Yeah.
But I said, what I would do if I were you is I would say, given the nature of what that campaign was fixing to how that campaign was fixing to happen, I said, wherever I went, I would make a tribute to Thad Cochran.
Right. Which is what this guy did.
I would say Thad Cochran has done a fantastic job for Mississippi. The world is changing, and we need new leadership. And if he doesn't come and personally ask you for his support, I'm here today, and I need you to vote. People still like to be asked, will you vote for me? They love that. That is still one of the best things you can do with somebody.
I would get messages. By the way, here's a knife for the mustard there. I would get messages from people, and they would say, you hadn't been to so-and-so's house. He's waiting on you to come by.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and that's like, I had the longest justice court judge district in the state. But I tried my best to go to every single house, you know what I mean? It was 82, Highway 82 all the way to Rome, north of Parchment.
Oh, wow.
But it was, people that have never run a campaign or been in a campaign, it is fun.
Oh, yeah.
In a stressful it's stressful and fun at the same time, which makes no sense. But there are times I do miss running for election. I do not miss being judge. It wasn't really my personality, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably be a better administrator or legislator than a judge. But I will say I'm never running politics again.
Well, I saw this over the weekend, and I've always heard this quote attributed to Nick Saban. This particular poster that I saw on social media did not credit Nick Saban with the quote, but it said, if you want to make everybody happy, don't be a leader. And that's whether you're a judge or it doesn't matter. Don't be a leader. If you want to make everybody happy, sell ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make everybody happy, sell ice cream. And that's right. I mean, that's just the way the world is, you know? And so.
By the way, my wife says I need to be on a diet, so I'm not eating. I'm going to blame it on her. I'm not eating bread today. I got my burger with no butter. And I did comeback sauce on mine, but.
There is one of my favorite, all that sort of stuff. And everybody watching this podcast needs to do this today. When they see this podcast, you need to do it later today when you have a minute. But there is a YouTube segment. Of course, the video's not there, but you've seen YouTube where it's just audio and
yeah.
You hear sometimes they'll do pictures, and stuff like that. Go in and search YouTube for LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ ordering slacks. Okay?
I think I have heard this.
And he gets on the phone with Joe Hager. And I'm telling you, it's one of the funniest things ever. And he talks about one of the things he needs is his waist. He said, you got to put some room in there with some of those bands where I can, so I'll gain 15, 20, gain or lose 15, 20 pounds in a month. And then there's all this other reference to why his pockets need to be deeper and how the crotch needs to be. It's classic Lyndon Johnson. And anyway.
Do you think, am I crazy, or does the history of what we think about him has kind of changed over the last 10 years? Because at one point, he was not very well liked as a former president. Mm-hmm. And it just seemed like when you see stuff now, he was trying to get us out of Vietnam, which I think he was. But it does seem to be kinder to him, and maybe that's just time.
The book that I just finished over the weekend was written by an economic historian named John Steele Gordon called An Empire of Wealth. And it literally is a history of the United States. I mean, I do all this political stuff all the time. This is call it a business history of the United States. It was like, we all think the oil and gas business is in Texas, and it was started in Pennsylvania, and it explains why and how all every single one of these, how the Erie Canal was just this massive deal. And
what's the name of it again?
An Empire of Wealth by John Steele Gordon, and it is just a fantastic. Leads all the way up to about 2010. It's not a new book, but it's just really good. But a lot of it was talking about LBJ's Great Society, and so a lot of conservatives really don't like LBJ. And then LBJ was also, I think, I don't know if the audience, I don't know what sort of monitors we have here with our audience, but he was a nut-cutting politician. I mean, he was a guy who learned how to count votes in the U.S. Senate as majority leader, and
he was harsh.
He was tough. And he also got elected that way in his early days, And so a lot of people say he stole elections and all that sort of stuff. To people in Texas, I've been married to a girl from Dallas for 31 years, and you have very divided on the subject of Lyndon Johnson. I admire his political chops. I mean, he was very capable of all sorts of things. I don't know his involvement in the Kennedy assassination. Some people like to try to loop him in on all that sort of stuff. I don't really know. But a fascinating guy. Bob Cairo wrote a trilogy of books, and he started out as going to be a tribute to the guy. He was a fan. And after the first one, Pursuit of Power, which was kind of early days, he got to where it was like, this guy was a bad guy. And so the books are flavored that way. So anyway, it depends on who you ask. But
it was a different time to be a politician in this country too.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that getting civil rights legislation passed was obviously the big thing that, in retrospect, people have changed their thoughts about him. Maybe I went to his museum, which is on the campus of Texas.
Correct.
In Austin. And they had one of the cool things there, you could pick up the phone or a phone in there and listen to his conversations. And it's just playing on a loop. So
that's what this YouTube is. About him ordering slacks. Same thing.
May have been where I did that. But one of the things I listened to, he was on the phone talking about how he's like, I just don't know how we're going to get out of this Vietnam War thing. It's terrible. We shouldn't have never got in it. The crazy thing is I was with a guy named Milo Hamilton. And Mr. Hamilton, he's my parents' age. He's 83 now. His dad was Undersecretary of State for Kennedy. And so I'm talking about Eastland and Eastland's relationship, and there's some stories there. But he goes, well, Daddy was Undersecretary of State for Kennedy and somebody else. But he told me a story, and I don't know how true this is. But when Kennedy got elected, he had a meeting with Eisenhower. And Eisenhower says, you need to dismantle the CIA. And I think that's pretty documented now that Eisenhower and Kennedy definitely talked about this. And he went to Mr. Hamilton and he said, I want you to run the CIA. And he says, I'm a lawyer. I know nothing about that. He said, no, I don't want you to run it. I want you to shut it down. And he refused. They ended up putting him as Secretary of State. And Milo's got so many stories about his dad as Secretary of State. But he was a lawyer, never lost a case in front of the Supreme Court, was his claim to fame.
Where's Milo now?
Austin, Texas. So that's why I was with him when I went. And he worked for Uncle Ben's for years, so he knows every rice farmer in Mississippi because he was the rice buyer for Uncle Ben's. He speaks like 5 languages. He's got cool stories too. He was in Alaska at a listening post because he spoke fluent Russian. So once he got done with basic training, they shipped him to Alaska and said, you need to go up there and listen to these Russians talk. Because that's about as good as they could do probably back then. But
well, the story I've always been amused by a story I've heard on language like that. Was Nikita Khrushchev, who was a dictator in Russia, in the 60s. He spoke English, but he did not act like he did.
I've heard that.
It gave him more time when he would meet with people speaking English. They'd hear something, and then he'd
Give him time
he'd
to
hear
think
it,
on
absorb it, while his translator was telling him in Russian what the guy just said, but it gave him twice as long to think about his response, which I always thought was kind of interesting.
Smart.
Kind of smart. Kind of smart.
I always said I wanted to learn Spanish and not tell. But we used to go down to Mexico and buy all this stuff. We had a gift shop in Cleveland. And I said, I don't want them to know. I just want to know what they're saying when we're haggling prices. Give me an edge.
And you definitely haggle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting time. We were young and we had a little gift shop in Cleveland. We didn't know what we were doing. But we had fun with it. Do you keep up with the world politics the way you used to?
Yeah. I sure do. I look at, I've got a weird sort of approach, and for me, I've gotten to do this my whole life. I never thought, when I ran for Congress in '93, I was 31 years old or 30 years old, and I never really sort of aspired to make a bunch of money. Everybody's got a different sort of zone that they hit, right? And you do it, and sometimes you figure it out. Sometimes you figure it out in your 20s. I've figured out some things in 2021 on some books that just hit me at the right time. They were perfectly timed. So people find out these things all throughout their life, but I've gotten to do pretty much what I've loved doing for 40 years. And so it's like I've really enjoyed it, and so I still stay up with it. I told this guy this morning, I told you I was talking to a guy from Ohio, and we were talking about, he was asking about this situation in Venezuela.
Well, that's what I was going to ask
and everybody gets upset, but it's because they hate Trump. And let me just say, and you may get some hate mail over this, I ain't a Trump guy, okay? I'm not. I am a Reagan, Bush, Jim Baker kind of Republican. I think that government is supposed to be dull and just work and not all this craziness, not all this yelling and all this other kind of stuff. And so, but the establishment, as we are referred to, country club Republicans, whatever you want to call it, we didn't do right. We made mistakes. And I looked up, I will never forget Jack Abramoff was a lobbyist, and I'd been a state director of college Republicans back in the 80s, and he was the national director of college Republicans, Jack was. And he ended up being a lobbyist, and I looked up, and it just struck me as odd. He and Tom DeLay, who was a congressman from Houston, Texas, who ultimately rose to being Speaker of the House.
I remember him.
And they were off in Scotland on a golfing trip. And I just said, that's not going to end well. That's not going to end well. That don't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And part of the Tea Party, I think, the whole thing going back to 2012.
Is that kind of what brought Trump was probably the Tea Party?
I think so. People got sick of, in their minds at least, of government not working. And I don't think we did a good job of stepping up and going, no, government is working. We're fighting a group of people across the aisle that think that your taxes ought to be really high and that we ought to be spending way more money. To me, all of this is fundamentally pretty easy if you can have the discussion in just a calm manner. But we sort of abdicated that. And so people said, we're sick of it. And Trump came along and just abused all those Republicans up on stage. There was 14 or so Republicans running for president, and he just wore them all out.
He sure
did. And that is what people wanted to hear then, okay? And so now and then, of course, the establishment, Republican and Democrat in Washington, D.C., just hate the guy. And the media hates the guy, okay? I mean, there really is this thing, they call it the Trump derangement syndrome. It's a real thing, you know. Venezuela, perfect example. Every single president, probably since Jimmy Carter, has had some police action in this hemisphere. Latin America, South America, Mexico. You know, Bush had to go to Panama and get Noriega. You know, so it was the same exact thing.
Grenada.
And Grenada.
Yeah.
Nobody was like, you know, when Obama went and got Osama bin Laden, they
Went into a foreign country.
how do they? I mean, you know, well, why are they doing this?
Didn't tell Pakistan they were coming.
And so Maduro had. I mean, it was clear. This guy I was talking to the other day was talking about the thing that scared him about Venezuela was Hezbollah, which is a Middle East terror group.
Yeah, what are they doing?
They had a base in Venezuela that they used for smuggling,
which is wild.
and the guy just let them operate out there. So Trump did the right thing. We did the right thing by getting rid of this guy. You know,
Should have been done a while back.
sure,
And even Biden talked about doing it.
yeah,
That was the other
That's right.
thing that because I've gotten to the point now, I don't believe anything anybody says in politics anymore. And so I do
Smart.
try to research, and I was curious what presidents have not done some kind of overseas police action, if you want to
Yeah.
call it a police action, without oversight. And the first one to do it was Jefferson in Tripoli, and they put that in the Marine song. You know, they fighting the Barbary pilots. He didn't declare war; he just sent the military over there.
right.
But the only one I could find that didn't, who was it that lived like 30 days and died? He never really got in office.
Garfield,
I think it was Garfield. And then John Adams.
yeah,
And he kind of famously said, we don't need a military. I don't want a military. And even lost the election over that issue probably because they thought we were going to go to war with France, you know. And so that's interesting to me because it's literally every president, like you said. It's literally all. It may not be right to do it without that, but there's a precedent there.
well,
for sure.
you don't need now, especially where literally members of Congress dislike one another, openly, flagrantly dislike one another. I'm just telling you, people can act like, no, hey, you've gotten older and you know this, that, or the other. No, let me just tell you, 40 years ago, you had a little bit of harping. Okay, that's just typical politics. But I've seen it too many times when I was there. I mean, we were Republicans. We were talking to Democrats. I sat with a guy who was basically the staff director for, on the Ag Committee. They have subcommittees. And on the Ag Committee, they're split up by commodity. Now, there are other subcommittees, but cotton, rice, and sugar is its own subcommittee. Or it was then. I don't know if it's still the case. But they break them up by commodity groups. And me and this guy who was working for a Democrat, Democrats he was the chairman, we wrote the title to the cotton, rice, and sugar the subtitle or whatever that was in the 90 Farm Bill. This might be, my boss feels this way, your boss feels, you know, we marked that up over a weekend. Of course, you give it to your staff and give it to your boss, and we didn't pass the law, but
Yeah.
but it happens on staff level.
Yeah.
And so that's the way that works. You can't do that anymore. I mean, if Trump had said, I'm going to go get Maduro,
They would have definitely said no.
I'm going to go meet with. They'd have run out there for CNN and run out there for MSNBC
And in
said,
fairness,
oh my gosh, we're fixing to do all this sort of stuff. And I heard Trump say this, maybe even I think I've even heard Obama kind of reference this, But the press is like, how come we didn't know? At some point, so it goes back to this quote about selling ice cream. It's like, because you don't need to know.
Yeah.
I mean, when you live in a representative
If you know, they're
democracy,
gonna know.
how come, it's like I've heard people act like, well, why didn't they call me? Why don't I know? And you're like, because you don't need to. If you want to go get involved in all that stuff, go run for Congress. I mean, that's the way people ought to look at it. And if not, you vote for somebody that you think
Well, like I was going to say, it
will
goes
be
back
your
to
voice.
what you said, representative democracy.
Exactly.
Well, and I remember the 80s, because I was born in the 70s, but I really grew up in the 80s. But I remember the friendship between Moynihan and Reagan.
Yeah.
And just they would do those one-liners back and forth, but you could tell Moynihan, but you got me this time, I'm going to get you next time. But they also could get along. I remember one of my favorite lines Moynihan said was, if both of us agree, one of us is not needed.
That's
It's
great.
okay to not agree with each other. If we all think the same thing, we don't even need a government.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's we live sort of, and I think this is social media. We live in a world now that is not governed by, hey, I can disagree with somebody, I can hold a position and it's okay, even if that position is a minority position. It's like you are either with me 100% of the time or you are a bad guy.
You're going to
And-
like this. I've
And,
gotten to know
and people just, I mean, that's crazy talk, if
It
you
is.
ask me.
So Tom Ziegler, Zig Ziglar's son,
Oh, yeah.
he lives out in Dallas now, but he's become a friend of mine, and he's doing a thing online after Charlie Kirk got shot. He was in Nashville, we were in Nashville at the same time, and he gave a talk just to a small group of us that night, and he said, I didn't follow Charlie Kirk, I don't know who Charlie Kirk is. He said, but you had two sides. One side said he was the second coming of Jesus Christ, and the other side said he was the devil. He said, I'm smart enough to know he was neither one of those things.
Exactly.
I had never seen any of his stuff. And he said, now how do you get those two people to talk to each other when they're so diametrically opposed? So he's writing a whole series now on what is truth and how do we sit down with somebody who we don't agree with. And one of the reasons I want to have you on is you've always been good at that. Like when you ask in circles, you have a lot of respect from Democrats and Republicans. How have you been able to maintain that, even through all of this? Because you really do. You talk to Democrats in Mississippi,
Sure.
all like Hayes.
Yeah.
They all like it.
I mean, you know, Mike Espy's a good friend of mine. I know his boy Mike, who played football at Ole Miss, helped my son with his speed. That's what it's about. It's the fabric of a community. You don't, I mean, Mike and I don't hang out together, but we're friends. This new mayor of Jackson, John Horn,
Yeah.
is a great friend of mine. And it's because when he was elected to the state senate in the early 90s, we were both kids. He was elected to the state senate. I was working for Fordice. And we just kind of matriculated through the system. But we've been together. We've been to dinners. We've been, out for drinks. John's a good guy. And I know that John loves Jackson.
Yeah.
Okay? And anybody, it's just Hayes' world, that wants to trash your state capital, you just don't care a lot about your state if you're going to trash your state capital.
I would 100% agree.
Now, Lumumba was a mess. I still, to this day, one of the other guys that got caught in this deal, that were in Miami on a yacht with undercover FBI agents.
If you want to see
cash-
something funny, you should watch that undercover video. It's on YouTube.
And they did not. I said, you went on a jet with a guy you didn't know, okay, and he gave you a wad of cash on a yacht, and you took it, and it's all on video. I'm like, what were you what were you thinking? Because one of these guys is really smart, okay, and is a good friend of mine. We had worked together on issues, and I was just kind of like, God dang. You just sort of wonder about it. But I think that, look, I've been accused of being a Democrat. I mean, I'm not I've never been accused of being a Democrat. I've been accused of not being
being
as
too friendly?
true blue or Republican as I should. And I just, everybody that taught me politics, whether it was Thad Cochran or Haley Barber or Chip Morgan or any of the people that I learned politics from, a guy in Yazoo City named Lloyd Moore was a black guy who we got to be really good friends with, And we talked about it all the time. One of my really good friends now is a guy named Artie Armstrong, who's great friends with a lot of elected officials in the Delta. He's from Jackson. His father was one of the heirs lawsuit plaintiffs.
Yeah.
Was a city council president back in the day, and it's just we work together. Common good, mutual, and you just show somebody mutual respect, and it doesn't mean that you agree with them all the time. That's the thing. And so when I worked at the Delta Regional Authority, look, the people to me, there are partisans on the left and the right, particularly today. It's really, to me, sort of worse than it's ever been. And there is a guy who has run for office in the Delta for state office, legislative offices, that I know has said something to another guy about me, and it doesn't matter. I'm not pointing fingers or whatever, but you just kind of have to be true to yourself, and you just kind of have to say, all right, what are my values, and my values are. There's that saying or whatever, and there's allegedly a book. I've never seen it, but everything I needed to know about life I learned in kindergarten or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that now, I'm 63 years old, I think that now today more than anything. Even in this environment where social media is raging and all of this sort of stuff going on, I tell these candidates on AI, we represent all the newspapers in Mississippi. Newspapers are under stress. Newspapers are not like they were 30 years ago, okay? We've worked for them for 18 years. And what we do mostly is we do public bodies sometimes like to meet without the public knowing about it. And we are kind of the watchers of that. And we sort of have to make sure the laws are strong enough without being too strong.
Yeah.
and if you look, I tell these guys in office now, I'm like, about AI, okay? We watched an ad last night, and we realized about 10 seconds into it, it was completely AI-generated ad, okay? The person looks real.
And it's going to get better.
And it's going to get better.
Yeah.
It hit me hard in the fall of 24 when there were a bunch of stuff out on Instagram of Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and they were like fishing together in a boat, or they were carving a turkey at Thanksgiving, or
I saw
that kind of thing. And boy, I mean, it was real. I mean, it looked like, it was really hard. And I would argue that 70% of the people that see that were like, well, that's good that they get along, or whatever. And so I tell these guys, look, man, Facebook is not going to protect you from an AI-generated deal of you cheating on your wife, right, or goodness knows what. And I'm like, the newspaper will. Jamie Patterson in Yazoo City is going to stand up and go,
that's not right.
That's all AI. It's not right. Don't look at it. Don't listen to it. Don't pay attention to it.
That's a good point. And in the populace like me, I'm not in any kind of elected position, becomes more skeptical of everything because of this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which leads to the fringes being the fringes. And it's so weird now that it's like the far, far right and the far, far left have a lot of the same conspiracy theories now. Have you noticed
sure.
that?
Yeah, they're meeting
Yes.
in their middle is what I say.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Y'all aren't meeting in the middle. Y'all are meeting in y'all's middle.
They're so far out, it just made a circle back around.
Somebody
because
told
it's
me,
like Marjorie Taylor Greene believing the same stuff the people on the left believe. It's
right.
like, what is...
All of a sudden, by the way, on her.
Yeah.
She's newfound on all of it, though.
Yeah, but all of a sudden you hear Democrats supporting her, and it's like,
right.
What is going?
Right.
What is really?
Well, because she's now mad at Trump. That's why.
And,
the media likes her now.
They
hated her a month ago.
But it's all just weird to me as somebody just sitting on the outside looking in. It makes somebody like me want term limits. You know what I mean? And I know, and I hate gerrymandered districts. I don't know how you feel about that. I know you were a victim of some of that in the middle of a campaign.
I have been a horrible victim twice of racial gerrymandering. Okay,
in the middle of
if anybody like thought that was really like, well, I was going to stand up and cry about that, they'd go, man, get over it, dude. You know, whatever. And so I'm against it, okay? But I'm also I'm against what I call just sort of fake news. Just you can call it whatever you want. But we live in I mean, like all of I love Ole Miss. My kid played football at Ole Miss, and I knew Lane Kiffin was a dirtbag on September the 6th, 2021 at Mercedes-Benz Stadium against Louisville. I knew when he was sitting his butt in Oxford with COVID and had now, which is totally ironic, Mississippi State's football coach, Jeff Levy, was acting head coach because he was offensive coordinator at Ole Miss. Okay,
yeah.
And he forced Levy into moving Kincaid around on the depth chart from Oxford. And so I've never, everybody's like, well, all the people who look at the Ole Miss fans, we all really liked him when he was winning all those games for y'all or whatever. I go,
but it wasn't. It is the truth to that.
I knew he was bogus. I knew he was bogus from the jump. Okay, and had it not been, knew
who he was.
Had it not been for Jeff Levy, my kid would not have gotten a chance to have a week in the NFL. And it was just wasn't. Oh yeah.
Now tell me that story.
So
of course your son Kincaid played for Ole Miss.
Yeah, and then he had 2 great years at UT Martin.
Yeah.
And won 2 conference championships and a playoff game, and it was just you just had the great run that he knew that he could have know, but so college football teams have what is called a pro day in the spring, and so the pro scouts come around and they'll be in the indoor center. At the case of the most big schools now have indoor centers, and they time them in their 40s, and they have this guy doing this, and the linebackers are doing that, and the scouts are wanting these guys to go through these certain drills, kind of like we see the NFL Combine, for same sort of thing. But they call them pro day, and UT Martin's was not big. They had like 6 NFL teams this past spring, or last spring 25, and didn't have a lot show up. Well, Kincaid was asked by Jeff Levy to come to Mississippi State and be the quarterback because the young man, I can't call his name, Camaro Taylor or what, the kid that ended up playing a lot for State towards the end of the season, was young and was not interested in having pro scouts look at him yet.
Yeah.
Right? And Chapin had not made it to Starkville yet. And so Jeff asked Kincaid to come and be quarterback for the pro day. And so that means
what a flip of the coin.
That means you're throwing.
You're
you're throwing to the tight ends, and you're throwing to you're doing all kinds, and you're helping with the guys looking at the defensive backs, and all this sort of stuff. And so there were every team in the NFL was in Starkville,
and I'm sure
every SEC.
Levy wanted them to look as good as he could.
Sure.
So he wanted somebody with some experience.
And so that's where he met the guys from the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he had an offer to go to Canada and turned it. He said I'm not going to do all that. I'm gonna wait and see. And we were all upset. We were like, come on, man, we'll go up. You need to go up there. And he turned around and he got it 3 nights later. The Jacksonville Jaguars called, and so he got that box checked. And so I'm a huge Levy fan, and so we went through a great experience. We took this fall off because of 2 years of recruiting, 4 years at Ole Miss, 2 years at UT Martin, and so we took this fall off. And I went to the Arkansas game. It was the only game I went to, and I watched every single one of them. But it just, when you have a kid go through all that, it changes how you look at all that, because you know what's going on behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And what's going on behind the curtain is not what people see on the front page of the Clarion Ledger Sports section. It's just not.
Well, I know that college sports, but particularly football, is really messed up right now.
Yeah.
And I think there's more people want to fix it than want to fix the other problems we've been talking about, oddly enough.
I think that they would if people got to make that selection quietly and silently. I think they would much rather see college football fixed than Washington
I do
fixed.
too. I really think so. I think that.
Well, it's just such a big in the South. But look, I got a business partner who lives in Milwaukee, and he's a Big Ten guy.
Yeah.
And so I've had to live through the last couple of years of going, yeah, SEC, woo, big deal, or whatever. And
3 years now that we hadn't had a SEC.
So now it's I tell them it's an aberration. Don't worry, things will get back to normal soon, and all that sort of stuff. But it has changed, and it's a completely different sport. I watch these kids, man, playing at the FCS level. It was fantastic. Great level of football. And it was the kids are into it, and the kids it ain't about money, and it ain't about this or that. And it was just, man, I love playing ball.
Yeah,
and and that was really cool.
That I think we need a commissioner of football for college, probably.
Well, I thought we had the Aflac Duck. We
Well, it probably should be Saban. He had the best thing about when this whole Kiffin thing was going on. He was like, you should not be able to recruit somebody else's coach during the season.
Yeah.
Which you can in the NFL.
Right. Correct.
Now, after the season is fine. You want to fire your coach now, it's fine. But a lot of those firings happened because they were trying to get in line. They had to start recruiting. They couldn't start recruiting, say, Kiffin, if they had a coach.
Right.
So probably Florida and LSU did their firings trying to get Kiffin, which is just wrong.
Yeah.
On a lot of different, on a humanity level.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then you throw the dysfunction of Kiffin involved in that, and it really gets ugly. Like I've noticed it's been interesting during this chaotic month or so that all this has been going on is all of these other coaches that have stepped up and been willing to say, this is just really bad. Lane complicates it, but it's still bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It was bad anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you'd have had what we're talking about, where you couldn't even recruit that coach till after the season, that would have remedied a lot of the problems.
His biggest problem now, I think, that's more so than even leaving Alabama and Tennessee, is what's happened and the photographs that are out there and the social media that's right below the surface. I've seen a bunch of it, and I think and I've told a couple of my buddies who are LSU guys, it really doesn't even have anything to do with LSU. This is not. This is really. I'm not trying to say to LSU folks, y'all aren't involved. They are involved. They got a great program. Kincaid, when he went down there, he was a recruit, and Orgeron was the coach. I don't have a bunch of hate for LSU. I got a lot of good friends who are LSU people, and their radio announcer's a great friend of mine, and just this is a sort of a single sort of deal, and I think you're going to see within the next 12 months in the calendar year of 26 some things happen that Lane is going to regret having taken some selfies and some.
We all know.
Because we saw it a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit of it was out there, but some of the stuff I've seen just curls your toenails. I mean, you just kind of go, dude, you're a grown man. Why would you do something like that? And it was kind of funny, but we'll see. But that's my bold prediction. He wins a lot of football games. Even Kincaid thought he was an offensive genius.
He is. I think he is.
He just and I don't know what the future holds. I do know this. I think that we are in a new zone. So like schools and of course the biggest proof is Indiana.
Oh yeah.
Right. But I don't think that the Blue Bloods, that's what the reference is, the Blue Blood programs.
The Alabama, the LSU's at.
I think if they don't bring it and do it right on personnel and do it right on coaching and do it right on the things that, with the NIL piece, and then also how you manipulate a roster. There were kids at UT Martin that had started out at at FBS schools and didn't get a chance to play, but that ultimately end up playing in the NFL because they didn't get a chance. And so you're going to now start seeing those with programs that have money, that are just able to look. Texas Tech is sort of like that. They kind of came out of the mid pack of the Big 12. They got a booster down there who's saying, "I'll pay for whatever. Just tell me how much I need. What do you need? Whatever." And I mean, they were top 4 seeds in the playoffs, and so they didn't do well. But that don't mean they won't be back. They're gonna win those kind of games, I believe, with this booster in place.
The fascinating thing about Indiana to me is they didn't spend that much money, really.
No.
It's opposed to.
I think Signetti
he's very
is sort
smart.
of like Saban. I think he knows how to build he built that roster.
He handpicked
yeah,
specific people.
That's what I think.
And went after them and people he knew he could afford. It's
Now,
it's
look,
been
I'm
impressive.
like I started talking to you about this. I'm getting like this. Matt Gordon's gonna call me and go, "Hey, you talking about football? You're out of your league now." So
hey, some years have passed since then. You had a kid playing in it. Got a whole new experience.
Right. We had a completely different experience.
Well, back to politics. How do you feel about term limits? Because I know so many people, me included, that go maybe, and I know used to, and I think the founding fathers' idea was the Senate. You want the older people in the Senate that've been there a while, but they want. I mean, every 2 years, they definitely wanted new people on the other side.
So this is a thing. You remember George Will? He's probably 120 years old now, but he was around in the 80s as a big media guy on the right, a conservative and all this sort of stuff. And I remember him saying one time, I think he was the first person I heard say this, but he said, term limits are a bad idea whose time has come.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, yeah.
And so, but here, I've got a different twist, having spent 22 years in the lobbying business. We've built a business model. My business, the people that I work for, we either are selflessly promoting Mississippi, and it's, I think, one of the reasons why you maybe have some Democrats say that to you. Our clients are not some massive healthcare company that's saying, you better keep that money at Medicaid flowing this way or that way or whatever. The other ones are kind of boring. I mean, a lot of what we do, but like we've helped your guest for Success Supper Club recently, Jack and Elizabeth Coleman, on the craft spirits legislation for what they're doing in Rosedale and what the guys in Oxford or Taylor are doing that with Wonderbird and that sort of thing. That is the kind of work we love to do. Consequently, those aren't big, huge clients, okay? But what I've developed this whole thing on. So my thing on term limits, though, is this. If you set term limits, guess who's going to really run the government? Or the lobbyist. Because they know all they got to do is old Stafford's going to be in there for 8 years.
Get the new guy.
And they just work the new guy.
Yeah.
And then but then they can even start working the government guys that are there permanently. There's so much structural thing. My fix today, which I think is the best fix there is, period. Okay, this is the Hayes Dent solution.
Okay.
Right here, breaking it right here, first time publicly. But people know I've said this. I think you punish as few people as you can punish, right? When you're trying to really fix something, when you're trying to change something. And so what I want to do is say that if you are a member of Congress or you serve anything colonel or above in the military, or you are a labor union leader, any of those people, and there are going to be a couple more categories we'll put in there, you cannot be a lobbyist. You cannot work to influence government to do anything. Because
after the fact.
After the fact.
Yeah.
You run, you're going to be a congressman for 10 years, a senator for 10 or 12 years, you're going to be a general, and then you're going to go get a job with Boeing. And guess who you're going to be asking for billions and billions of dollars? You're going to be asking the guys that you help promote through the system for all this money. You're going to be asking your colleagues from Congress. So no knock on anybody. I just think if we can punish a few thousand people, that's a lot of people, I know.
Yeah.
But
not
right
350
now,
million,
hundreds of millions are being punished by this cycle that we've turned into, which is, and the other thing it's done, Stafford, is it has influenced the people that we see going to Congress. The people that, there are a lot of people in Congress that want to go lobby after they get out.
Really? So that's
and there are a lot of elected officials who, I mean, look, let's face it, if you're an elected official, you spend 25 or 30 years in state government doing whatever it is you do, or if you spend time in Congress or whatever, or the military, and you attain the rank of general, you've got a government pension. That's it. You've gone through a retirement system. You're 55, 57, 58, 60 years old, and you ought to not benefit from any of
governmental
the stuff
activity
that you help create. And so my solution is penalize the fewer people as possible. You just can't lobby.
Yeah.
I'm gonna run for the legislature, and I'm gonna run for Congress, and I've got to agree that it's codified into law that I can't even work for a law firm that lobbies, because that's a lot of them. You get these huge law firms that have public affairs divisions,
But they're really just lobbying.
they're just lobbying, and they
Do
go,
they
well,
have
I'll go to work
do
for
they
a
have
law
to
firm.
register as a lobbyist when they do that?
You should.
You should. How do these people get so wealthy being politicians? Because that's something that I kind of understand it, and both sides do it. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
you look at some Republicans and Democrats. Some Republicans make the same trade Nancy Pelosi makes. You know, I can't wrap my head around how they make that kind of money, that much money.
Well, I mean, I think just,
How do you change
I
that?
don't. Yeah, what I've read about her situation, and then also a lot of members of Congress who know they're buying defense stocks, or they're buying some company that's fixing to get $1 bazillion.
I mean, it's
government
insider
contract.
trading, but it's legal.
It's insider trading, and it's, you know, I don't even know if it's legal. I guess it's
I
legal,
think-
but it's, I guess they don't have
I
a
don't know what I
law.
think.
I guess they don't have a law for it, but they can theoretically say. I mean, look, there's a guy that has a Nancy Pelosi index, basically.
I saw that.
Did you see that? Where a guy
Unusual
goes, you can
whales or
invest,
something?
you can invest in my deal, and we just, whatever Nancy Pelosi invests in, because she discloses it, is what we invest in. And the guy's got this huge return rate or whatever. I don't know. Some people, like what I've noticed, we've got, and that's something else I think it's important to say. We've got great elected officials in Mississippi right now. I mean, it doesn't matter to me whether you like somebody or not, but I can tell you, as a guy who I think is at 63 liked by Republicans and Democrats, Tate Reeves is doing an unbelievable job as governor. And Delbert Hosemann was an interesting guy. He came in, he was successful before he ran for Secretary of State. He was a successful business guy. And so he has been able to do that. Lynn Fitch was successful in what she did, and then she ran for public office, you know. And it's you know, we've got good leadership in the House and the Senate, in Jackson at least, are not as close as they need to be, but they're really, we've got really good people right now, in my opinion, running the state, and it's showing. I mean, this thing that Governor Reeves popped out over the weekend about, you know, I've always been amused when you see the U-Haul index, and that, you know,
that was Kirk. I saw that.
who are the people, you know, and I guess it's a great idea that a company like U-Haul, they know where people are going.
Yeah.
You know, because they can keep up with their thing. And so we've made huge strides.
Huge strides in education.
In that. And the thing I like most about Tate and the leadership that we have now is we're getting away from. We need to be like Florida and Texas, and it's like, dude, I've been married to a Texan for 31 years. We ain't nothing like Texas, and never will be. And that doesn't have to be a bad. I don't mean that as a bad thing.
No, it's just different. We're just different.
And it's like and so what we're doing is we're carving out a niche. You talked about local politics earlier. If you I tell people in Mississippi, local officials, go to Natchez or go to Ocean Springs or go to Oxford. Take Ole Miss out of it. Ole Miss probably is driving a lot of growth, just like State drives a lot of growth in Starkville, and USM's driven growth in Hattiesburg. So, but those towns work, and they're working well. They've got beautiful, and they've got good mayors. And they've got people who kind of are on top of what they're kind of up to, and the citizens buy in, and you just replicate that model. I tell guys in the Delta that supervisors in the Delta, I go, look, y'all need to go and sit down with the guys.
So what's the model? What do you mean replicate the model?
Fix the little things that nobody likes to talk about. A guy gets elected supervisor or mayor or whatever, and we'll start talking about economic empowerment.
Make sure the garbage runs on time.
Make sure you want economic empowerment in your community. Make sure there's no garbage around at intersections, and it's clean. And you spend a little money on that one little tourist attraction that people like to come to. You make sure that thing is standing tall 24/7, and that when the people who put on TripAdvisor or whatever, that we came through and saw the, whoever memorial or whatever, and it was really cool, or whatever, and you do it, it's all of that's local. I mean, everybody's always heard this saying about all politics is local. I don't mean that. I'm talking about, stick to your knitting. That's the one thing I've said about Tate. He's just always kept his head down and done his job. There's 10 things 10 things, 15 things he ought to be doing. He does them, and he's got good staff, and he's got and he's been able to accomplish those things, and it's really been amazing to watch.
His whole thing is personality, right? I mean, people don't like his personality.
Yeah, I think.
But if you got down to the nuts and bolts, I think people like what he does.
That's right. Yeah, Tate's. That's right. I don't care. It's kind of like Fordice. I don't care whether you like me or not. Yeah. My life does not go up or down as to whether or not you think I'm a good guy. I'm here to do a job.
He's not an orator the way Reagan or Obama was.
That's right.
They were such great orators. They could communicate the vision. So,
that's right.
So well, he doesn't quite have that.
Yeah.
But the vision turns out, and I always, because I couldn't make up my mind if I liked Tate or not, and then he gets elected, and the first week they have all this mess at Parchman, and then by March we got COVID, and I was like, I would not want to be the governor of Mississippi right now.
I know,
because he just came in, and none of those, and then you had the thing with Brett Favre and the former governor and all of that. All that kind of came out within the first 3 months of him being governor.
I know,
and I was like, he's kind of inherited a little bit of an issue here.
Yeah, and just to me, he just kind of batted them down one at a time.
He did.
He just did a fantastic job.
Because I'm not gonna lie, there was a part of me that I was just like, I was a little standoffish about Tate, and now here we are almost 6 years later.
Yeah.
And it's like the results look like they're pretty good.
Yeah, we are making real progress. I mean, this the very idea that Mississippi can go from 50th down into the teens,
on education.
And into the single numbers in education ratings and stuff like that.
Number one in all of this African American against African Americans in other states. They're number one in almost every category.
Correct.
Pretty good.
Correct.
Incredible.
And we just need to celebrate. There's a book I read that's called the Gap and the Gain. And you need to live in the gain and not in the gap. And you need to. I mean, positivity and negativity cannot operate in someone's brain at the same time. So you can't be negative or pessimistic about something and think something good's going to happen. The brain doesn't work that way, and so you've got to say, we live in I love Mississippi. I love,
Yeah.
I mean, I spent all weekend on where I live out in rural Yazoo County, and it's, except going to church in Yazoo City, I mean, I love it when I don't have to go anywhere, because that's where I'm happiest. And so you have that, and you have a good, this guy I worked for in 2018, he ran for Congress. He had gone off and been just wildly successful. Perry Parker, he ran when Michael Guest got elected over in the 3rd Congressional District. He and I got to be great friends, and we were talking about just Mississippi in general, and he said, look, just in Jackson alone, he said, he's from seminary, and he said, just in Jackson alone, you have, if you, don't take the bad parts down. Look, in Dallas, I tell my wife all the time, there's some places in Dallas I can take her, and it's like, it's not the Gleam Dallas Cowboy,
No.
It's not where Jerry Jones is hanging out,
No.
and so Jackson's the same way. It's smaller than it used to be, but you got these great places, and you got citizens now, from the mayor down now. I noticed when you leave downtown, you go under this. It's not a tunnel, but you stay underground for 200 feet or whatever, and
the train
just over there by Howland Miles, right there under Howland Miles, and somebody has decided to light that thing up at green and red at Christmas, and purple and yellow and green at Mardi Gras, and and I noticed the other day for Thursday night for the Ole Miss game, they'd had red and blue in this thing, and I was like, that's a city that's carrying it. Would have been maroon and white if they could have done that. If state would have been, that's the kind of thing that can build, and that's, to me, what's going on.
Is Jackson a sleeper city? Is a place that can do what Nashville? Not Nashville.
No.
You're not going to have skyscrapers, but you know what I mean. Be a destination.
Yeah, I
place
don't
where
think
people wanna
so.
live.
I think what we need to be is we ought to be like, we're not going to be as big as Columbia, South Carolina, or Montgomery, Alabama, or place. I mean, you go to.
But it's got potential that people don't realize.
It's got great potential. It's got. I mean, look, it's the capital city, and I say this to my friends in Madison all the time. A suburb cannot exist without an urban setting. So you can't have Madison or Rankin. And that's what Perry said. Look, if you take Madison, Rankin, North Jackson, downtown area that's now controlled by the Capital City Improvement District, which is this new sort of thing that
That's been
Hayes has
huge.
done. It's been crazy huge. My business is located 2 blocks from the Capitol. I've got a 2-story. I've got a building that I operate and have tenants in, and we're beside ourselves.
I think that may be his legacy.
At how good all that is.
Don't you think?
Do what?
That may be his legacy.
It
Because that's the
could
one
be.
thing that was totally his thing.
I think this economic development is turning into it, but it
was kind of that ball was rolling.
But he stepped up as a Rankin County guy and did all that and showed that was crazy leadership.
Yeah.
To go put all that together, and so I think it can happen. I think it's going to be a quiet Southern capital. That's what I want it to be. Okay, but I want it to be successful. I want us to have. I mean, if we'd had the right mayor, John Horn had been mayor of Jackson when the Atlanta Braves wanted to come in to that market again after the Jackson Mets had gone.
He could have gone
years and years ago. We could have put that stadium downtown, and they'd probably still be there. And I know a lot of people are down on. I know there's even out there big social media guys are not high on Jackson, but it's okay. You just keep moving forward and
I have seen. If you
I want
hadn't
it to work.
If you hadn't seen it firsthand, the difference, just having that Capitol Police presence. My daughter goes to Belhaven, and any event that happens anywhere in downtown Jackson,
Yeah,
there are 8-10 Capitol Police cars around.
they're everywhere.
And my other daughter lived there and went to Mississippi State last year. Architecture school is right by the old Capitol.
That's right.
And she was like, "Oh, we walk downtown."
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, "What?" And she said, "It's safe, Daddy." She said, "You just don't cross these roads over here."
That's right. That's right.
And it just opened my eyes. And you do see more roads getting paved. There are things happening.
Oh yeah.
And I do
Big time.
think that's before, it just seemed like to me the Republican side and the Democrat side that ran the city did not want to talk. And it seemed like Tate's giving leadership on that.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
That
Big
they're
time.
talking now and they're making the difference, because I'm a big believer, if you're going to bring somebody into our state to invest here or move here, they're probably coming through Jackson.
Yeah,
at
oh
some
yeah.
point.
There's no
And if
there's
you
no
come through
question.
Jackson the way it has been, they're going to be like, yep, not moving here.
Not good. Yeah, and that's happened. We know that's happened.
Look at Austin. You got a Democrat-run city, we're not going to be Austin, but you got a Democrat-run city and a Republican-run state. It
Correct.
can't work.
Exactly a similar deal. Now,
Yeah.
they're bigger for a lot of different reasons, but it's the concept is the same.
Yeah.
It can totally coexist. John Horn knows that the state is where, and the federal government
Where the money is.
where the money is. And like he made his first State of the City address. My son and I went down there and heard him make it, and he talked about getting along with Roger Wicker and Cindy Hyde-Smith and the congressional delegation. And that's
huge.
important, and it's saying so much. And he's got the people around him, I know, they're great staffers, they're capable people. And so I'm real bullish right now on Jackson.
I am too. I have a lot of hope for that place, and even I'm 2 hours north of it, it affects me here.
Oh, yeah.
What happens there?
No question.
And I don't think people understand how affected we are statewide by our capital city.
Yeah.
And yes, there are problems, but it's all our responsibility,
Yeah.
baby.
There are problems in Yazoo City and problems in Drew.
It's problems in Drew.
Okay? And so to transpose that to some other, there are problems in Oxford and Starkville
Yeah.
and Natchez and Ocean Springs.
There are problems in
but
the
it doesn't.
restaurant, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the
Doesn't mean you
biggest.
throw your hands up.
It's literally how you look at something. It doesn't matter whether it's football or a city or a state or a restaurant or whatever. It is how am I going to choose to look at this thing?
And Jackson's also
you
a
know.
sleeper restaurant city, by the way.
Oh, it is.
Great food in Jackson.
It's great food.
Yeah.
That's what Perry said. This guy that never really told you what he did. He said you got great schools, you got great churches, you got great restaurants, you've even got great clubs, and you've got
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And we are.
You need a good infrastructure.
Yeah, hell yeah. And it's so important and exciting.
That's a perfect thing to end on, my friend.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, man.
I think so.
I think
Well,
I know you got places to be.
I'm a big fan, and so
Well, I'm a fan,
looking
too.
forward to getting my signed copy here in just a minute.
Look, I got it right in that
As soon
box
as we,
for you. We're going
as
to do
soon as
that.
we go off.
By the way, you want a shirt and farms hat? Do you ever wear a hat? Playing
You
golf
know
or
what?
something?
I'm not a big hat guy, but I'm going to take one because I wear them when I'm not me. My wife and kids see me, and that's the only Or I just don't have need.
Well, they're right. You pick one out, what color you want out, and
Okay.
I appreciate you coming.
All right.
And I'm a big fan of yours. I've been begging you to come on here for like 2 years, I think.
Yeah, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Okay.
All right.